push that button that says got it, and we can get started. So if you're not familiar with AARP, it's the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people to choose how they live when they age. With nearly 38 million members and officers in every state, plus Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, AARP works to strengthen communities and advocates for what matters most, with a focus on health security, financial resilience, and social connection. Now, today's program will focus on healthy living, which is part of the livable community for all social change agenda. So who's in the audience today? Now, I know I asked earlier your city, your name, your state, and what holiday favorite dish that you will be looking forward to eating or be there. So Jacqueline, tell us, share with us some of those yummy dishes.
Oh my goodness, I'm getting hungry just reading them. We have Atisha, whose favorite dish is sweet potato pie. We have Olivier Hernandez, who likes tamales and hot chocolate. We have Grace Sonia from San Jose, who loves cranberry sauce. And we have Kiko, who's my personal favorite, has standing rib roast with mashed potatoes. It's going to be some good eating this holiday season.
Oh, I can't wait. Oh my goodness. Holiday time is my favorite time of the year. Now, earlier, did anybody get a chance to see our trivia question? What percentage of Kona coffee needs to be in a bag of coffee to be sold as a Kona blend or a Kona style coffee? What do you think? You think it's 50%, 70%, 10%, or 30%? Put it in the chat. What do you think, group? Just take a choice, either one. Okay, Jacqueline, are they putting any percentages in there? What do we have so far?
Yes, I have, Olivier thinks it's 10%. Chard thinks it's 50%. Someone else thinks it's 30%. And another 50%. What is the answer, Joyce?
Well, the answer is 10%. Now, because of the rarity and the price of Kona coffee, some retailers sell Kona blends. Now, these are not combinations different from Kona coffee, but a blend of Kona and Colombian, Brazilian, and other foreign coffees. Now, usually they contain only a minimum requirement of 10% Kona coffee and 90% of the cheaper beans. Oh, brother. So currently, Hawaiian law requires the blend state to only have a percentage of the Kona coffee on its label, but not any other coffee ingredient. Some retailers use terms such as Kona roast or Kona style. To be considered authentic Kona coffee, the state of Hawaii's labeling laws require the prominent word to display 100% Kona coffee. So Jacqueline, what kind of coffee do you enjoy?
I love a good cup of Arabica bean coffee, whole bean, but I like Kona too.
You like Kona too? I know there's a person in here that I definitely want to ask about coffee. She's a coffee lover. Atisha, what kind of coffee do you like?
I love my Cafe Bustelo coffee.
Wow, that's absolutely wonderful. Does everybody have their tea or coffee with them? Show your cups, show your cups. Come on, it's tea and coffee time. So we're delighted to have you to join us and hope that you have your coffee and other tea and beverages with you. We're excited to share with you the healthy living eating. Now, before we start with our presenter, I'd like to do some fun polls. So, Vince, what's poll number 1? All healthy holiday eating polls. Now, do you usually do cooking during the holiday time? Single choice, yes or no. And do you find it difficult to maintain healthy habits during or after the holidays? Single choice. So just in the poll, just decide which one that you'd like, one or the other. And then the third poll says, have you brought healthy dishes to a holiday dinner? Single choice. So these are 3 fun polls. Okay, Jacqueline, what do you see?
I see that almost 100% of people are cooking during the holidays. That sounds a little suspicious. Do you find it difficult? 100% of the people also say yes. I can relate to that. And on the last poll, have you ever brought healthy dishes to holiday dinners? Only 50. It's kind of 50-50. Some
50,
have,
50?
some haven't.
Okay, and then we're going to do poll 4 at the very end, just to, in case you change your mind, we want to do poll 4 at the very end, okay? Okay, so now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, nutritional educator, Taurus Smith. Now, Tiara is a project manager from Beyond Type 2. Now, Beyond Type 2 is a place where everyone is impacted by the type 2 diabetes to share their stories and get connected. And they get connected to the community, and they find resources on topics from daily management to mental health. Now, as part of our tradition, we like to add some spice to our introduction. Now, you see she's great at what she does now, but let's knock it up 1 notch. Tiara's favorite burger place is the Shake Shack. Everybody know where the Shake Shack is? Yes. And her favorite films are Marvel movies. I like Marvel movies. Now check this out. Tiara's favorite type of cuisines are Italian and Southern foods, thanks to her granddaddy. And the very last thing is that she loves hiking around the Bay Area. It's her favorite way to get some exercise and to relieve stress. Let's welcome back Tiara.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me back. I really like doing the healthy living presentation during the summer, so I'm glad to be back for the winter time. Just another fact about me, I also have diabetes. I have type 1 diabetes after being misdiagnosed with type 2, but my life really hasn't changed all that much since I found out that I had one type of diabetes over another. So in addition to a lot of these tips coming from like my professional experiences, a lot of them also come from my personal ones. So I totally understand what it's like to have to, or feel how it feels challenging to want to eat healthy during the holidays when you just want to indulge in everything. But I hope this presentation gives you like really good practical tips that you can use over the next week. And also, I can't believe that next Saturday is Christmas. It feels like the year just started. So, but yeah, I guess we can get started with the first slide. So I guess next slide, Vince. So what is healthy eating? Healthy eating is just a balanced way of eating that incorporates different fruits and vegetables, protein, generally unprocessed foods, but all while allowing you to enjoy the foods that you like. Healthy eating does not have to be boring, flavorless, or bland, or even difficult to maintain. A lot of those attitudes come from this notion that healthy food means it's going to be flavorless or just, not good to eat. But that's not true, because you have a lot of herbs and spices and different creative ways to eat healthy in a way that satisfies you. Next slide, please. So, but healthy eating can still be challenging during the holidays. If you're someone that is living with an illness, or if you're trying to watch what you eat, or if you're on this like health journey, it can be difficult to try to maintain those habits during the holidays, because you can feel isolated if there are foods that you want to have, but they're not conducive to your health goals. There may be pressure to overindulge, and it may not be easy to say no to certain dishes. Depending on your family, like with mine, we don't like to tell the host no if we can't eat something. So if you have like that family member that's like, hey, I have this, really, really good dish, whether it's like cookies or someone's mac and cheese or yams or whatever. And if they're like, have some, it can be hard to say no because you don't want to offend anyone. But then there's also the possibility of feeling guilt or shame if you overeat or if you indulge in certain foods that you're trying to stay away from. And also, finally, it can feel like as if you're ruining any progress that's being made towards your health goals. There's this feeling that you get like that you're working really, really hard towards something, no matter what your health goal is. And then you spend like a day or two just like throwing all of that to the wind. But no worries about that because one day doesn't ruin your progress. Next slide, please. But there are different fruits and vegetables that you can still indulge in for the holiday season that are in season right now. And the beauty of these fruits and vegetables, of them being in season right now, means that they are at their most flavorful, they're at their most nutritious, and they're less expensive than if you try to buy them out of season. We can like circulate these slides, I think, to everyone if you're interested so that you can keep these on hand. But this list isn't exhaustive. I just found some seasonal fruits and veggies from a cookbook that I use. But a lot of these that you can find in a grocery store. So Brussels sprouts, collard greens, squash, sweet potatoes, leeks, kale. And these are all relatively inexpensive at a store. Like I usually go to Food Max to buy a lot of these. Fennel, potatoes, Swiss chard, carrots, beets, generally root vegetables, broccoli and broccoli rabe. And as far as fruits go, a lot of them that you probably already eat already: apples, avocado, lemons, pears. I love a good baked pear. Just as a side note, I love like a good baked pear with some like toasted or candied walnuts and like a little bit of ice cream or a little bit of whipped cream and some cinnamon on top. Pumpkin, kiwi, bananas, oranges, pomegranate, dates, grapefruit, tangerines, clementines, and persimmons. Just really good ingredients to use during the holidays. Next slide. And of course, like herbs to buy, you can find a lot of the things that you use in summer. You can find them in the wintertime at the grocery store. But the main thing to take away from this slide is you don't need to buy fresh herbs. So there are some herbs that are more in season. So during the summertime, so like basil, cilantro, thyme, tarragon, dill, parsley. A lot of those herbs are tend to be less expensive in the spring and summer. But during the wintertime right now or late fall right now, you can also buy them dried. So personally, I cook with a lot of dried herbs because there's the one thing that I don't like is if I buy fresh herbs and then just a few days later, they are going brown and they're going rotten. And then I have to throw them out after spending a few dollars on them. That $3 or $4 adds up after a while, especially if you end up wasting it. So I like to stick to dried herbs around this time of year. And dried herbs can pack like a ton of flavor too. So, and they can be an economical alternative to buying fresh ones. And herbs that are really good dried are probably the ones that you already have right now in your pantry. So oregano, basil, thyme, rosemary, bay leaves are all great dried herbs that to always keep on hand. And they, like I said, they pack a ton of flavor in pretty much no matter what you have. But if you want to use fresh herbs, they work best if you're, tossing them in a salad, or if you're using them as like the last ingredient in a soup or a stew, or if you're using them in like a dressing. So that's probably the time when you want to pick fresh herbs. But dried herbs work just as well for pretty much anything else. You can like get them for like $1, like Big Lots or Food Max or something. But something else that you may want to try are warm spices that work really well this time of year. It's pretty cold out, and we have warm spices that really kind of like kick us up a notch and make us feel really like nice and toasty inside. So some of the ones that you might want to keep on hand are allspice, cinnamon, cloves, cardamom, cumin, curry, ginger, anise, turmeric, pumpkin spice, coriander, peppercorns, and cayenne pepper. And also, if you want, you should put in the chat like what types of spices and herbs that you always keep on hand. Like, what do you usually cook with? So for me, I love to cook with curry powder. I love to make like a good coconut curry with a little bit of cayenne pepper. I like to throw in some shrimp or some chicken usually. And also like some cayenne pepper. Yes, Vince, so I love cayenne pepper just to add like that warmth feeling. But I also use things like allspice and cloves for like to marinate chicken with. So another fact about me is that I'm also like half Jamaican, and my dad loves just cooking jerk chicken. Cloves is like a main ingredient in that, and so it helps give that spice and warmth that you're used to if you've had jerk before. Um, and I also love using like cinnamon and ginger in things like cider. I love to put ginger and not ginger, cinnamon in my coffee. There are just different ways that you can use all of these warm spices. I mentioned in the chat that one of my favorite holiday dishes is pork tenderloin. So one of the things I like to do is I like to take some of these warm spices, kind of depends on the flavor I'm going for, but like allspice, a little bit of nutmeg, some salt and pepper. I put in peppercorns, and peppercorns you can just like grind up, and it really just takes everything to a whole nother level. And I like to marinate, or I like to do like a dry rub on some pork tenderloin. I like to let it sit, and I like to put it in the oven, like let it like just slowly roast, like with some like root vegetables, some onions, some carrots, maybe even some celery, and like those warm spices really penetrate that pork, and really just give it like just all this deep, rich flavor. I'm like pretty hungry right now too, so this is where a lot of this is coming from. But yep, all the spices. And you can also use these spices in fruity desserts. So if you have a pack of, let's say if you have a pack of berries and you want to make like a berry crumb for the holidays, you can use things like cinnamon, maybe like a little bit of allspice, maybe even a little bit of pumpkin spice if you want, and use that as part of like your crumb topping. So that's a good way to use that. And then you can also use it for like to cook root vegetables in as well. Next slide. So, but what are like some easy, healthy holiday eating tips? And you can feel free to put in your tips as well on how you plan to maintain healthy habits as best as possible. But I came up with 7 ones that may be helpful to you. So the first thing is you want to make a plan. If you know what's being served ahead of time, go into a holiday dinner with an idea of what foods that you will and won't have. Chances are you're going to someone's house who you're pretty much familiar with, so you already know what's going to be served. Think ahead of time. Like, what are some things that you know that they're going to serve, and you're like, okay, I know I'm going to have a little bit of this, but I won't have that. But the biggest thing I think out of everything here is to watch your portion sizes. I am not a fan of telling people what they can and cannot have. I think you should eat what you like, but I think it's more about how much you're eating and not about the food itself. Like, I don't believe in good foods or bad foods. But you might want to opt for like smaller plates instead of larger dinner plates. And I do have an example. So I'm going to show you what I mean. So typically, if I'm eating dinner, I like to put most of my food on this plate if I know I'm going to have like a lot of like potatoes or stuffing, a lot of starchy things. And as a person with diabetes, I'm always, careful about how many carbs I'm eating. So I like to get something just like this. And I'll put some starches on here, but I also like to fill some of it with vegetables and like maybe some meat and protein or other types of protein. But if I eat on a larger dinner plate, so this is a larger dinner plate that I'm talking about. I like to fill most of this with vegetables and then like a little bit of carbs and a little bit of protein. And just to give you an idea of the difference in sizes, you might want to aim for this one because this one will keep you from overeating as well. And this is what I mean by like watching your portion sizes. So I hope this example is helpful. If you want, you can also bring a healthy dish. So I love telling this story because it's my family is so funny. Like they're definitely the type of people who like if you say that you bring a healthy dish, like the first thing they're going to do is give you a side eye. They'll look at you like, what do you mean? Like, you're bringing a healthy dish. Does this mean that it's going to be something that we're going to want to eat? But I one time brought a dessert that was an alternative to brownies. I hid a secret ingredient in it, and I'll tell the secret in a little bit. But I came in and I was like, hey, just try these brownies out. I put on some like sea salt and some chocolate icing on top. And my uncles are hilarious because they're the ones that will just flat out tell you if they like or do not like something. And you can take it personally, or you can just keep it moving. But I watched one of my uncles eat it, and he was like, oh my God, this was really good. He was like, it's really, soft and moist, and it's really deep in chocolate. And I also put like a little bit of espresso in my brownies just to kind of deepen that flavor. And I asked him, I was like, well, would you try them again? Would you want to make them at home? And he said, yes. So I said, okay, well, can you guess the ingredient that I put in it? And that's when, like, if you could hear like just a screw in his brain, when I said secret ingredient, like his mind was like, what do you mean you put a secret ingredient in here? And I said, well, I put in black beans. They're black bean brownies. And his face went from like amazement to pure shock. And then he gave the And when he gives that, that means that he's like, oh, okay, that's actually really good. And I was like, well, if you're surprised about that, then you have to be surprised that the icing I put on is actually chocolate avocado icing. And the great thing about using the avocado is that it masks, like, you can't tell there's avocado. So like the chocolate and everything really just like, masked everything else. And then I put on some sea salt on top. So, and he asked me like, well, is this a healthier alternative? And I said, yes. Even though I still put in like some like white granulated sugar, mainly because I wanted like that rise to interact with, like, I think I put in baking powder. But that was an example of bringing like a healthier dish. I don't know if you want to sneak in seek in a healthy one like I did, or if you want to be upfront about it, but I got a kick out of just like surprising everyone, and they ended up being a really big hit. Yes, I will send you, Antoine. I think I just saw your comment, Antoine. You have the same reactions, Uncle. Yes, and now I'll send you guys the recipe. So the next tip is to stay hydrated. You can drink water or another beverage, and this is mainly to avoid overeating. And this is going to lead us to my next point, which is to recognize your hunger cues. So this means you don't need to eat to the point to where you feel like you're about to burst out of your clothes, unless you want to. And if you want to, that's cool. I mean, it's only like 1 day or 2 days. But the important thing here is to ask yourself, am I satisfied? Am I actually hungry? And if the answer is no, then you can stop there. And if you do want more food, I recommend either going for a walk after you finish like your first plate, letting that food digest a little bit, or you can take home leftovers. But the important thing here is to really ask yourself and really be honest with yourself here, and ask, do I want another plate? Do I need another plate? Or am I, just choosing to overindulge or indulge a little bit more than usual? And that is okay, as long as you're being honest with yourself. So for me, for the holidays, like for Thanksgiving, I knew that I was going to eat a lot of food. I went into that day knowing that I'm going to have a couple of plates of dessert. I went to a diner and I ordered a bunch of food for myself, and I knew that going in, and I had no regrets after. I think another point of this is to kind of, decrease that feeling of guilt or shame around eating a lot of foods that you really like. And like I said before, it's just 1 day. Like, it's not gonna like ruin any kind of progress that you have. It's really just about, understanding if that's what you really want. And if that's what you really want, then again, like, you can plan for it and just have fun. And then exercising before and after the feast. Going in, you might want to take a walk, or maybe go have a really good workout beforehand. And then after you eat, when you're full, a walk is great. It's just about physical activity that you really like. And then for my last one, don't go too hungry before dinner. Eat a snack prior to avoid overeating. So I think a lot of us probably have those family members who say that dinner is going to be ready at like 4 o'clock, but then you get there at 4 o'clock. They're like, oh, dinner's not going to be ready till 5 or 6. And you're like, cool. I did not eat all morning or all early afternoon because I came here ready to eat everything. Don't do that. If you just eat something small, right, Grace, Sonia, I'm guilty as well. Eat something small. It can be, you know, a small breakfast or a small lunch or a snack, just something to hold you over for a little bit before dinner. And again, this is also to like I said, avoid overeating to the point where you feel like you can't walk, basically. Next slide. So again, we can circulate these slides because all of these have links. So these are just healthy holiday meal ideas. The first one is actually a recipe that of mine that's in Diabetes Self-Management magazine. It's an herb roasted butterfly chicken. And I got the technique from America's Test Kitchen. I just adapted it a little bit for my style. And I came up with an herb mix that's really good on some roasted chicken. One of the main parts of this technique is that you use preferably a cast iron skillet if you have one, and you bake it in there for about an hour, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, but at high heat, and you get really good crispy golden skin, and also the chicken is still really juicy as well. But then we have lemon rosemary chicken, citrus roasted salmon, roasted beet salad, broccoli casserole, roasted butternut squash. I also really love a roasted butternut squash soup around this time of year, especially for the holidays. Maple roasted sweet potatoes are a really good one. And then there's like a roasted pear, sweet potato, and radicchio salad, using all of those seasonal ingredients, really tasty and easy to make at home. Next slide. So this came up in some discussions that I've had with Atisha and Sophie about how long leftovers last. So again, you're probably going someplace where there's going to be like a lot of food that people are just going to be like, take it, whether you want to take it or not. My family is definitely like that. But the one thing you want to make sure is that you don't accidentally get food poisoning. Trying to make leftovers stretch. And I totally understand if you're one of those people, because sometimes the food is so good, you don't want to let it go. But unfortunately, we have to, preferably within 3 to 4 days. And this is mainly according to the FDA. And at the last bullet point, I do link to a food safety chart that's really handy by the FDA, but otherwise you can go to foodsafety.gov and find it. But you want to eat leftovers within 3 to 4 days. Otherwise, after each day, you increase the risk of food poisoning. And if there are foods that you bring home that you know that you won't eat, that you won't eat within that time frame, try to freeze it immediately. There are definitely some foods that freeze better than others, and I have a slide on that later on. But preferably cooked meat or poultry can last in the freezer for about 2 to 6 months. Most foods can last in the freezer for around the same amount of time. Some foods can last up to a year. The food safety chart gives a lot of that information. Cold food should be refrigerated immediately. But cooked foods, especially perishable foods that sit, you don't want those to sit longer than 2 hours at room temperature. And then again, at the bottom, I do link to the food safety chart that's by the FDA. So which foods freeze well and which foods don't freeze well? So things that you can make ahead of time and pop in the freezer before you take it over to a family member's house, before you cook it at your own home. So like green bean casseroles, mashed potatoes, baked goods like rolls, cookies, pies, and muffins freeze well. Stuffing or dressing. Just curious, do y'all call it dressing or do you call it stuffing? I'm really interested in that because I guess depending on where you are, people call it different things. I call it stuffing, but I think I've heard dressing as well. Yep. Hey Vince, I'm right there with you. Uh, and so that's all the exclamation points. Okay. And turkey and ham, most meats freeze well. And gravy it does as well. This list is not exhaustive, but these are just some really key ones that I thought were interesting. Gray sodium for the stuffing gang. I heard if it's cooked in the bird, it's stuffing. If it's cooked on the side, it's dressing. Huh, that's interesting. I've never heard that. Interesting. So foods that don't freeze well, cabbage, mainly because it gets really wilty when you thaw it. Cooked rice and cooked pasta. If you're gonna freeze those, you wanna undercook them. Because if you cook them full and then try to freeze them, they're just gonna get mushy when you reheat them. Cream sauces or milk or mayonnaise based foods, those don't freeze well because they separate when they're frozen. Same thing with egg whites or egg white based icings. And with cheese or crumb toppings, it's just going to be mushy when you try to thaw them out or reheat. Next slide.
Tiara, that's all I've got.
Oh, okay, that's it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I thought I had more information. Okay, well that was fun. So does anyone have any questions? This was a lot of fun to talk about. Any questions about but anything that I have here, including, you can also, if you're someone that's also like have diabetes or something, I'm also happy to answer questions about like kind of dealing with kind of just making different choices around food. I know it's like a difficult time if you're trying to maintain health goals, but I'm happy to answer any of those questions. How long can you store dry spices? Dry spices can last, I think, up to a year. They last a pretty long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a quick question, Tiara. It's Thanksgiving time or Christmas time, and we have parties and everybody has their food laid out and the tables look absolutely wonderful. But you mentioned, but we need to store it within 2 hours. So how do we do that? Because people are coming in and out.
Yeah. So if you have that food out, the best thing you can do is like have something to keep it hot. So it's like you either keep it hot or you keep it cold. So if you can, try to like have, what are those things where you sit on like a
Chafing dishes, little chafing dishes.
Yeah, or if you have like a baking dish that's really good at holding that kind of heat, that's something that you might want to invest in.
Oh, like a crock pot.
Yes.
Oh.
So yeah, basically try to keep it hot or try to keep it cold. But you don't want to default to room temperature and keep it at room temperature for a long period of time.
Right, thank you. Jacqueline, you see anything else in the chat?
I see one really good question. It says, let's say you overindulge. What might help settle the stomach naturally? That's a good question.
The best thing is movement. So definitely going for that walk. Whenever I overindulge, especially when I'm hanging out with family, and that's the time when we're like, let's just go walk up and down the street and go chit chat about life. Because what you really want that food to do is like slowly, digest a little bit, and movement really helps with that.
Someone else was asking, do you have a recipe for Swiss chard?
I do not, but I can find one for you, Atisha, if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Awesome.
Right.
I think so just to kind of relate another experience of mine, one thing that I really like doing, or something that I found to be helpful for me, is really being open about my own limitations with family and friends. I think when you have something like diabetes or another like food related illness, it can be hard to be open about the challenges that you may be experiencing or the anxiety that you may be experiencing, especially when it comes around food. But what I've learned is that when you tell people, hey, I thank you for making this, but I can't have as much as you think, people tend to understand. And also they tend to try to accommodate you as well. So we're about a little over a week outside of Christmas, and if people are making those plans now, tell people, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. I can't have food that's high in salt, or I can't have food that's high in carbs, or I'm trying to eat, mostly vegetables or go vegan or vegetarian. Most people would ask like, okay, well, what can you have and how can we accommodate you? And there may be a dish or two there for you. And that's also another reason if you want to bring a healthy dish to a dinner.
One of your good tip for someone was the helpful list of what freezes. She said her family had leftovers, were always frozen and not very tasty. So that was really very helpful of what freezes well, what doesn't.
Yeah, thanks. Some of those I've unfortunately learned the hard way when I tried to reheat them, namely like the greens, like cabbage. I've tried to reheat and it wasn't working. I've done that with like cream-based sauces. It just didn't work. And I searched over the internet to figure out why, and then I saw like, oh, it's because it's tend to separate, which is why it doesn't freeze well. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Then so leftover turkey, I like to make turkey sandwiches. I love to like kind of take and kind of toss it with some onions, maybe like a little bit of cheese. And if I have gravy left over, I like to put gravy on the sandwich too. It's really good. But also like the bread I really like to use. I love to use like a brioche bread, like a really thick bread that can really take that gravy. So that way it doesn't go mushy, but like when you bite into the bread, it's still really soft and holds up well. I feel like also like, and Tisha, I think you mentioned this like yesterday, which is like a hash will probably be really good if you have, also like a leftover ham. I think a leftover ham would be really good with some eggs, or if you put it with some like potatoes and you make like a ham potato hash would be really good with some scrambled eggs. Turkey soup sounds really good. And turkey curry sounds really good too. Choco.
Yeah.
Really quick, what about, I'm sorry, Jacqueline. What about, somebody mentioned about freezing foods. So you mentioned about portion size and freezing food. So would you cut it up and put it in Ziploc containers, or how do you, what's a good way of storing food in the freezer for more than a month or whatever?
Yeah, if it's something I'm not going to use relatively soon, I put it in like a larger gallon freezer bag. And depending on the type of food, I may also have like freezer containers, and I may freeze them in larger containers or gallon bags if I'm not going to use it right away. If it's something I am going to use relatively soon, like within that week, I store them in smaller batches just so I can just grab and go, and I don't have to reheat like a huge batch and then try to refreeze it. It's just more convenient that way, in my opinion. Yeah, make sure you press all the air out when you freeze it. That was a really good question, Joyce.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. Only because we use like these sandwich bags, so when our guests take home food, so instead of putting them in containers, we put them in Ziploc baggies, like portion size, and then we'll put them in one bag. So instead of me having all of this spoiled all over the place and all these containers, we have freezer bags. So I was just asking, is that okay? Is that a good way of sending leftovers home?
It is. And also, like, if you're someone that does like a lot of like meal prep, if you're someone like has like a pretty regimented structure during the week otherwise, if you have like those bento boxes or any kind of container that you use, you might want to take that to dinner as well if you know that you want leftovers, but you don't want like a whole bunch. You just want to kind of separate them for different days. I think that's a good tip as well.
Great. Now let's go to number 4, poll 4. We talked about that a little bit earlier. So let's kind of, maybe you can kind of help us with that, Tiara. So we talked about watch the portion sizes. So can somebody, as a takeaway, we have number 4, and we talked about watch the portion sizes, eat plenty of vegetables, drink plenty of water, and then pay attention to hungry clues. So yes, tell us which one of those tips you think you would like to try during the holiday time. And put it in the chat, please. And Tiara, maybe you can kind of expound on some of those little 4 items.
Could you list the options again? Oh, is the poll?
Yeah. So I don't know if Vince, can you pull it up again? But I know it was watch portion size, eat plenty of vegetables, drink plenty of water, and pay attention to the hungry clues.
Yeah.
So I can relaunch the poll, but it's going to show all the other ones as
That's
well.
fine. That's fine. That'll be great. If he relaunch it, that'll be fine. And then we can look at what some of the, and we'll go down to the poll number 4
Okay.
and see what the answers were. Uh-oh.
And Joyce, your question for me was, which ones do I think I'm gonna do this?
Yeah, which one do you think out of the 4? Because they all are really good. So which one which one kind of fits your fancy?
I think the one that stands out to me is the last one, pay attention to hunger cues. Because for me, I can always convince myself why I could eat more. Like for me, like I know I'm going to the diner for Christmas, and if the waiter comes by and says, "Do you want another slice of pie?" I will look at him for a good like 5 to 10 seconds and be like, and have this battle in my head, like, like I could have another slice, but my stomach is saying you don't need another slice. I'm good. My stomach is saying I'm full. I'm good. We can go on about my day, but my mind and like the taste and the flavor in my mouth are like, maybe just one more.
All the time.
So,
That's actually cute. Because looking at the polls, like watch the portion size is 100%. That's a lot. So I'm glad you showed us those different plates.
yes.
You know,
Yes.
you never really notice about plates until you put food on them. Because you never really notice. You know, people don't really pay attention to the size of plates. It's a plate and then they eat it. That'd be great.
Yeah, because like when you eat on a larger size plate, like your mind is like, I have to fill the plate. But you know, and that leads to eating more calories or whatever that than you want. Which is why, like with the smaller plate, you know it's a good portion for you right there. And if you feel hungry afterward, another thing to do is drink water. Drink a couple of cups of water and then give it a little bit more time. And let's say some time passes. And if you really want more, then go for it. If you can fit in squeeze in like a quick walk during that time, try that too, to give that food a little bit of time to digest.
Mhm.
Another thing that I want to point out, and I meant to include this in the slides, which is you don't have to feel pressure to clean your plate. Once you feel full, you can just stop. And that's another thing about like, you don't want to offend the host if you don't, if you leave food on your plate, but you know what your limits are. If you feel like, you put on too much and you know that you're not going to finish all of it, that's a good time to say, I'll box it up and I'll just take it home.
Tiara, I have a question.
I'm sorry. Looking at the post, hold on 1 second. She's looking at the post. You see all 3 at the very number 4. Can you guys see that one where it says eat plenty of vegetables, drink water, and pay attention? That's a 3-way tie. Atisha, what do you think?
I think that's great news. I wanted to ask Tiara about, especially cooking. We talked about this a little bit. People making potato salad or different things like that, or actually making salad. There's low fat this and olive oil mayonnaise and all of these wonderful things, and then there's this low sodium this. And how do you know what is actually the right thing? I know everybody tells you to cook with olive oil. People have missed out on cooking with grapeseed oil, different things like that. So like, what would be a great option or substitute for people to cook with? Because of course you're adding all of these ingredients as you're cooking. So what are some options or tips you could give us?
So things like olive oil or grapeseed oil, avocado oil are great oils to use because they're healthy fats. So like things like vegetable oil you might want to stay away from. But let's say you're at the grocery store and you see a low fat alternative or a lower sodium alternative. But I think fat here is probably the most important one. So if you see something that says low fat or reduced fat or fat free, especially, what I would recommend is taking that the healthier version and looking at the food label of the regular version and comparing them. Typically, if you see something that's like reduced fat or fat-free, they're making up those calories in something else. And that tends to be sugar or carbs. So one of my favorite examples is like a fat-free yogurt. I love fat-free yogurt. But when you look at the content when it comes to carbohydrates, you see that the carbohydrate content tends to be a little bit higher than if you had the regular version. And that's because they have to make up that flavor in something else. And that usually comes in the form of sugar. But also like that really also depends on the kind of macronutrients that you're paying attention to. So if you're someone that does want to cut down on fat for whatever reason, and you're okay with the extra carbs or added sugars, then that's fine. But also there's another point to this as well, which is sometimes getting the regular version is worth it because it tastes better. And again, I always think to kind of lead with flavor first. Like I wouldn't tell you to get like the lower fat version or the lower sodium version if it's not going to make your taste buds sing. If it's going to make your taste buds sing, get the regular version and then focus on the portion sizes there.
Great, thank you. Jacqueline, do you see anything else in the chat that you can bring to Tiara's attention?
A lot of requests for the recipe for those brownies.
Yep, I got you.
Including me. Brownies made with beans, yeah.
Yes, they do have white granulated sugar in them. I would just stick to the recipe as written. I've tried making them with like Splenda. Splenda doesn't give you the rise that you need. And there's also like a weird aftertaste. But if there is one sugar, I haven't tested it out, but if there's one or sugar alternative, I think I would try with these. It's Truvia. Because Truvia, it gives you the rise and the browning for baked goods, as opposed to like Splenda or what's another one I'm thinking of, like Equal, or even like coconut palm sugar.
That's good. Can we take just a few minutes and ask our members one more time, what's their favorite holiday food, yummy food that they would like to do, and what part would they would like to, do, like either vegetables or vegetables or the hunger clues at the very end. So anybody have any ideas about that one? Pick out your yummy food and then tell me portion size. How you think you want to do that? Anybody have any suggestions, questions? So let me give an example. Macaroni and cheese and dressing. Portion size, big. Instead of little, because I only get it during holiday time season,
Right.
a little. So what about anybody else? Anybody else have any suggestions? Greens? What do you see in there, Jacqueline, really quick?
I see somebody says, don't eat anything bigger than your head. That gives you a lot of room. Gives me a lot of room. Sophie. I don't know. I know for me, I'm cooking. I've already been told that I'm cooking prime rib, and I love any excuse to eat it.
Oh, prime rib.
Oh, so good.
Wow, great. What about you, Antoine?
I'm on the same lines as Sophie.
Right.
As you said, it gives a lot of room.
Right.
No, I know that there's plates and there are certain sizes of, like, you got the meat, you got the starch, you got just trying to keep that in mind. And my wife helps me out because she's a dietitian as well.
Lucky you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Insider information.
Okay, we have a couple of more minutes. What about you, Jacqueline? Look in there. See anything else in there that's yummy?
Linda says giblet gravy with stuffing or dressing, medium-sized portion.
Okay, so that's good. They were listening to you, Tiara.
Yeah. Equal says proteins, vegetables, more portion control.
Great.
I think the message about portion control, that was really very helpful.
Right. So that means people are thinking about that. That's absolutely right. So see, we have some takeaways. Very good.
And I hope that that is purposely serves to alleviate any kind of guilt that drums up during the holidays. Like, no guilt feelings allowed when you eat next week. Enjoy it and have fun. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You know, we're almost at the end of our morning. I learned a lot. Anybody raise the hand? Anybody learn some good takeaways? Getting ready for this holiday season. So again, of course I'm hungry now, so now I got to go and have lunch. Let's skip breakfast and go to lunchtime. So thank you again. So thank you again, Tiara Smith, for your great information. We will look for those recipes. You know that, right?
Yeah, I dropped the black bean recipe in the chat.
Oh, perfect. So make sure everybody does that one. And then for our moderator, Jacqueline, thank you so much, Jacqueline. That was absolutely wonderful. Our volunteer production crew, come on, you guys are great. Vince, tech person, great. And of course, our AARP staff and our members for coming in and joining us. There was so much information that we learned. So upcoming, our next event is next month is Making Every Cent Count, Everyday Habits to be Financially Resilient, which will be Tuesday, January the 11th, 2020 at 9 a.m. So just to kind of give you a quick update, there's also how to register at the very bottom where it says register now. And Martin Booker, who is a member of AARP's, the Financial Resilient Team, will be leading financial education initiatives focusing on Social Security, budgeting, and investing. So join us for a conversation about how everyday's habits can shape your financial resilience and how we can adapt to good habits. So if you have any tea and coffee sessions, please contact her. Our information is right there, so you'll be able to get in contact with her. And I know quick, but at this time, again, my name is Joyce Howard. I was so happy to be your host, and now you made me so hungry. So thank you again for joining us. And this concludes our program. Happy holidays and stay safe.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, everyone.